King of the Hill's revival continued its strong streak with Season 14, Episode 4, Chore Money, Chore Problems. An episode that continues to explore Hank's struggles to adapt to post-retirement life and gives us the first real steps into Bobby and Connie's adult friendship. This is one that feels like a real classic premise on Hank's side of things, and an interesting look at modern dating and friendships on Bobby's side of things, culminating in some of my favorite heartstring-pulling moments of the entire season. So let's dive in. And hey, if you like this breakdown, please consider subscribing. Not only will I be releasing one for every single episode of the season over the next couple of weeks, but over on my Patreon, I'll be posting my uncut reaction videos to my first time watching each episode. If that piques your interest, basically when I post the new episode breakdown on this channel, I'll simultaneously post my reaction video to that episode on my Patreon. Check it out if you're interested, and thanks for the support. Chore Money, Chore Problems opens with Hank once again struggling to find ways to fill his newly wide-open schedule. As you might expect, he's basically knocked out every chore around his own house that you could imagine.
I shaved 0.4 seconds off the sink's drain time.
And this episode is a pretty strong follow-up to the beer story in regards to Hank navigating post-retirement life. Obviously, in that episode, Hank found a specific hobby to fill his newfound free time, and in this one, he decides to tag along with Boomhauer, who's taken to a TaskRabbit-like app called ChoreChimp. Basically an app for handymen to get hired for tasks around town.
It's heaven on earth.
Though I gotta call out that the ChoreChimp app's icon is clearly a monkey, not a chimp or any type of ape. But we'll give it a pass, this isn't CinemaSins. Honestly, as far as Hank's story goes, I think this episode sort of strikes a perfect balance of old and new. I love the way Hank is forced to explore things he probably wouldn't have considered previously, and the ways those things ultimately challenge his perception or push him out of his comfort zone, even when the things he chooses feel right up his alley. It makes so much sense that Hank would not just be interested in, but excited to do handyman work for other people. In a way, this is kind of his love language. In the premiere, he fondly dreamed about checking Bobby's tire pressure for his reunion with him, and this was how he imagined their first reunion in years. He's such a practical guy, and one who has a lot of repression and discomfort when it comes to emotional vulnerability. He's always struggled with being open about anything involving his personal life.
Your father has kissed me.
Peggy!
So while Hank does a pitch-perfect job at all of the handyman tasks he's given, Boomhauer is the one who handles the customer service side of things.
Man, love, it's like in a dang old battlefield.
So because Hank is incredibly utilitarian, to him, doing a great job on a task assigned is more than enough. He doesn't realize the personability that often comes with this kind of one-on-one customer service. And after Boomhauer gets a concussion and Hank takes over his chore chimping entirely, he starts to understand that there's more to the job than just the chores. This is genuinely such a perfect Hank Hill dilemma. One of Hank's favorite things in the world, helping people through efficient, well-executed handiwork, being combined with one of his least favorite things in the world, emotional vulnerability.
Plus, Lena and I haven't had sex in I don't know how long.
Outside of the obviously more modern vehicle that brings this plot to us, the TaskRabbit-like app, this absolutely feels like the type of story you would have seen in the original run of King of the Hill. A genuine interest of Hank's being invaded by something that he truly struggles to cope with. And the app is a perfect delivery system for Hank to actually be forced to reconcile with this reality, because he literally gets a score for it. Only 2 bananas. I think this episode also did a great job having Peggy be the one to help center Hank and help him understand the issue here. While I think it's easy to look at Peggy's lines and tendencies in season 14, such as "I've been told my whole life I'm a 5" or the incredibly overconfident Arabic and Spanish, and think that they've maybe maintained a bit too much of her Flanderization, I feel like they've actually found a pretty good balance.
They just wanted a kind ear and some advice.
This episode in particular, while she is more of a supporting player, she does play a vital role in Hank's journey. Yes, she's obsessed with a British reality show the entire episode, but Peggy is a bit more sensible when it comes to other people, at least when it's a little less directly relating to herself, I'll say. There are definitely episodes in the original run where Peggy's entitled nature led her to fail empathy checks and do selfish things. But in this instance, she's fully able to help Hank face the harsh reality that while he absolutely did a great job, the chore chimp task wasn't all the job required.
I'm sorry I'm not Mr. Personality like Boomhauer.
This is also a pretty funny thing to bring up after the Uber joke we saw back in the season 14 premiere, where Hank gives his Uber driver 4 stars so he had something something to work towards. It's funny to see Hank immediately grapple with a new perspective, and this personal experience helping him understand that he might have been wrong.
If you ask me, 5s should be rare in this world. I deserve all 5 bananas.
We love a little growth, and I really loved that Hank's growth in this episode was twofold. He goes back to the couple, and while he did change his behavior here, he initially just sucked it up and allowed himself to share some things that he would have otherwise found uncomfortable about his personal life. He shares a story about how Bobby wouldn't latch on to Peggy after he was born, and this helped the young couple feel seen and heard. But that young couple also ran a YouTube channel and fully put Hank's story on blast in their new video.
Hank shared that Peggy had trouble breastfeeding.
God, this has gotta be one of my favorite Hank bois in the entire series. I'm obsessed with the animation of him throwing the phone. I gotta start memeing this. But what I love about this sort of additional turn in the narrative here is that it basically forces Hank to be more open with his wife. Peggy isn't actually upset that Hank shared her personal story with the neighbors. She's upset that he still struggles to share his own struggles with anybody, particularly her. And it still takes Hank a while to really figure this out. He initially just tries to share an embarrassing story about staple gunning Bobby's diaper when he was a baby, not understanding that this isn't the kind of openness he needs to bring into his life, and that Peggy is actually just genuinely concerned for Hank and can tell he's been struggling more than he lets on.
I'm sure you'd just love me to tell you how scared I am that I'll never feel satisfied unless I'm working.
They do such a great job with the dialogue here. Hank does open up, but he frames it as the things he's not supposed to say, the things that he won't say, even though he is just fully saying it.
I'm from a different generation. We keep that stuff inside.
That is so quintessentially Hank Hill. Obviously, this repressed, reserved inability to open up ultimately stems from how he was raised. This is a core aspect of the character laid out all the way back in the original pilot.
You know how I was raised? What my father's like?
I got my shins blown off by a Japan man's machine gun, so don't come crying to me with your problem.
And Peggy getting Hank to actually open up about his feelings in this new era of his life really nicely ties to Hank's journey in that original pilot, when he had to open up and tell Bobby that he loved him. I think this revival season is doing a really great job giving us these parallels to major stories and core pillars of the original run. And I especially love that even though Peggy was more of a supporting player here, they even tie her little story that was playing in the background to Hank's struggles, admitting that she also has no idea what to do in retirement, and that's manifested as obsessively binging TV shows. Honestly, I was really impressed that they managed to make Peggy a sort of unsung hero in this one, despite her playing this background role. And I think the line that really cements Peggy's importance here was from Hank, while he was giving that young couple advice, which genuinely might be one of my favorite Hank/Peggy moments in the entire series.
She thought maybe she wasn't fit to be a mother, but she worked through it and she became, for my money, the best mother in the state of Texas.
I love that even in Hank's struggles to open up here, he instead defaulted to just fully gushing about how much he loves Peggy. I think that even though Hank struggles with that old world mentality of keeping your emotions in, his attempts at emotional vulnerability are propping up someone he loves. That's pretty sweet. It's a really great Hank and Peggy episode.
And we work through it together, Hank. Mwah.
The way this story morphs into such a rumination on Hank and Peggy's relationship also ties it pretty effectively into the other side of the episode, focusing on Bobby and Connie's reconnection as friends. Overall, I really loved the way this season approached their reconnection over its 10 episodes. It didn't feel rushed and it was taken one step at a time. And this one starts this story by once again showcasing that Emilio is the man. Now, previously I said I was hoping we'd see Bobby's surrounding character cast expand a bit in his life in Dallas, and I still stand by that, but on rewatch, I'm really seeing how much Emilio fits into both Bobby's personal and professional life. He is just in full-on wingman mode here, trying so hard to help Bobby navigate reconnecting with Connie, giving him texting advice, and then just hitting him with this affirmation when Connie shows up at the restaurant.
I believe in you, Bobby.
Man, he's the best. I also do really love the runner that Bobby is awful at texting. I think that's such a fun quirk that's very real for some people. Bobby feels like the type of guy who would be totally chill and charismatic in person and on the fly, but when left with too much time, could devolve into overthinking and acting unnaturally. I feel like this is a good extension of like the episode I'm with Cupid, when Bobby completely panics and overthinks his recent breakup with Connie and embarrasses himself over and over trying to win her back. Bobby is great when he's in his element, but prone to panic when he's not. And this episode also highlights this exact tendency after Connie reveals that Chane invited her to the restaurant and that the pair of them are actually dating. Something I'm sure many people anticipated, and a through line this season that I think is really handled well from a character perspective for Connie. But Bobby's initial reaction fully leads to that aforementioned unnatural panicky tendency we've seen from Bobby before, this time manifesting as awkward probing questions while taking their order.
And after you're done eating, should I put each of your leftovers in separate boxes?
I feel like this is also a really good show of Bobby's integrity here. When Connie opens up to him that she feels like she's struggling to connect with Chane, Bobby actually points out that Chane is likely insecure because of the pressures put on him by his father, which is of course a pressure that Connie can deeply relate to. Bobby could have used the opportunity to further divide Connie and Chane and try to get himself in the mix, but let's be honest, Bobby wouldn't have felt good about doing things that way.
You're a good man, Bobby Hill. Dumb, but good.
I actually love that though Bobby is clearly struggling emotionally here, given his romantic past with Connie, his initial priority really is for them to be friends again. Sure, he'd love to rekindle the romance, but he'd rather be her friend than nothing, which Joseph feels incredulous about. But I think that's genuine here. In the original show, Bobby and Connie were actually friends before and after their breakup, longer than they were together, and they were great as friends as well, and I really appreciate that this is what the episode is about first and foremost. And also that even though Bobby has always been suave and personable, Joseph is still able to help wingman Bobby in ways where he's a little more adept. He helps prevent Bobby from that classic overthinking mindset, like after Connie invites him to karaoke.
I bet Chane's going too.
Dude, still, say yes.
Okay.
I gotta say, while I did really enjoy the karaoke bar scene for a lot of reasons, I did think some of this felt a little out of place in terms of the season's pacing. I loved seeing Bobby and Connie's chemistry on display, and I cannot pretend like seeing them sing together didn't hit. But I can't help but feel like that scene and the attempt to pull those nostalgic heartstrings maybe should have come in a later episode. Don't get me wrong, the pair singing Leanne Rimes' How Do I Live on stage, the song that was played during their big emotional dance scene in Love Hurts and So Does Art, it was really effective. It was actually a great scene, especially highlighting the clips of the old episode. That was a nice touch. But I feel like this would have been better served as a bigger romantic reconnection point later in the season, instead of something that was sort of so overtly romantic right off the bat when they're actually just reconnecting as friends for the first time. I know part of the intention here was to throw Bobby for a loop when he realizes that Connie is trying to set him up with her roommate, but I also feel like that makes her karaoke decision make even less sense. Why pointedly use a romantic song that they have a shared experience with if the intention wasn't to rekindle their romance? But maybe the point here is that Connie wasn't really thinking logically and was actually thinking more passionately and nostalgically. Regardless, this was my only real nitpick of the episode, since ultimately it serves as a reforging of their friendship first and foremost. And I did enjoy the other aspects of this karaoke scene. The brief discussion about apps and modern dating culture, and seeing how hilariously work-brained Bobby can be even in social settings.
You've got to ask all those first date questions like, what's your favorite kind of sauce?
Tell me that this isn't Hank Hill's kid. You know Hank would be bringing up propane immediately if he had to go on a date. It was interesting to see Bobby sort of panic when Ola was so forward about hooking up with him. Obviously, we saw him hook up with that girl in the first episode, but it was definitely under the pretense that they had really hit it off together, and he clearly showed interest in seeing her again before she cut it off. Bobby and Ola had a short and sweet conversation, but it's clear that Bobby isn't really into the more random hookup culture. I'd guess if he and Ola met in different circumstances, maybe they'd hit it off, but Bobby was definitely preoccupied after that karaoke duet. It's clear what and who he was thinking about. I really loved the way this episode wrapped up though, with Connie waiting for Bobby at his place, apologizing for blindsiding him with the Ola setup, and opening up to him. I really appreciated that Connie's motivation here was basically a way to try and keep Bobby in her life as friends.
I really want us to be friends, you know?
That's what I want too.
Yeah.
I said it before, but I love that the initial priority in this reconnection is friendship. Bobby and Joseph are a great friend duo, but it does feel like something is missing in their dynamic sometimes. They played this improv game called The Adulterers, where they act out their neighbor's date night, but Joseph cannot for the life of him figure it out. When Connie arrives, she immediately understands it, tags in, and has a great time with Bobby, and her playing along helps Joseph understand it better.
Let me just finish disposing of your husband's dismembered body.
Oh.
I don't know, it just feels like these three fit together, and this is a really great moment. It's the first of one of my favorite aspects of the character dynamics in the revival, that the three kids of Rainy Street essentially just become a crew as young adults in Dallas. They always had great chemistry as a gang, even with the occasional drama, and seeing them reconnect and stick together into adulthood was really more satisfying than I expected it to be. And I think they wrote this moment of reconnection really well. It's like the way you might slip back into a comedic bit with an old friend, even if you haven't done it in years. You just fall into old tendencies because you're comfortable around each other. Bobby and Connie always had that chemistry. Overall, I might have a couple issues with some of these episodes, but it really just feels like there's so much more they're nailing than the small things I have to nitpick. This episode delivers a great story on both sides. Hank gets a story that feels classic and explores his new post-retirement insecurities, and Bobby and Connie tug at those nostalgic heartstrings by rekindling their friendship. Truly, so few complaints, they're kinda killing it. And that is all I've got for Season 14, Episode 4, Chore Money, Chore Problems. Remember, if you liked this breakdown, I've got the first 3 of the season up already, more for Season 14 on the way, uncut reactions to these episodes over on my Patreon, and of course, tons more King of the Hill videos across the channel. Check out all that if you're interested, and stay tuned for more. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.